Hi, everyone. Glenn Wilhelm, Vice President of Business Development here at the Iron Cleanse by a Major Difference. And I am so excited that you're joining me here today. I have Theresa Haselmayer. Theresa's been a longtime Iron Cleanse customer. She's the founder of Foundations Wellness Coaching. So, Theresa, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to talk to us about Lyme, autoimmune, and the Iron Cleanse.
My pleasure.
Fantastic. So Theresa, she's got a lot of experience. She's been a registered nurse for over 30 years. She's a survivor and conqueror of Lyme disease herself after suffering with it for over 15 years. As I mentioned, she's now a practitioner. She's also a certified holistic practitioner and founder of Foundations Wellness Coaching. She's also an ILEDS member. And as I mentioned, she is a work with numerous clients who have benefited from the Iron Cleanse system. So I guess first and foremost, and I'm pretty much going to turn this over to you, Theresa, will be very informal. So 15 years with Lyme. Can you share your experience with us?
Sure. Yeah. It was something that I woke up with one day and said, "Oh man, I felt like a bus hit me. This is the weirdest flu I've ever had. I didn't know what was going on." And it went on and on and on, and went to many doctors, and they just couldn't find anything wrong with me. They just kept telling me, "Oh, you have acid reflux," or, you have blah, blah, blah syndrome. And, nobody could give me any solid answers. I think, I mean, this was years. This went on for years. I felt so desperate because I knew that it wasn't right. I was desperately ill. Something was really wrong. And it was more than just stomach pain and headaches and fatigue. It was many, many symptoms. And it just kept snowballing and snowballing. And I did have a few doctors test me for Lyme disease down the road when I sought out people outside the mainstream, and it always came back negative. And so as a nurse, I just thought, well, the test said negative. I don't have it. I don't know what I have. And I ended up, out of sheer desperation, pursuing people outside of the traditional medical system, which was nothing I ever believed in before, because, that
Sure.
wasn't my background. That wasn't my training.
Right. And I want to hear about that, but I want to go back to your symptoms and what you really experienced because, I've been here for 12 years and I get this, hey, I've been feeling like this for so long and I just finally got my diagnosis. What are those symptoms? What did that like for Theresa? How did that impact your everyday life?
Yeah, it was just crushing levels of fatigue. It was heart pounding, just always feeling like my heart was just pounding in my chest. I do remember that being in a heaviness in my chest. It was one of the more troubling symptoms for me personally, but it was brain fog and memory issues and headaches and migraines and TMJ pain. And it was fibromyalgia. I got that diagnosis too. Chronic fatigue syndrome. I ended up getting that diagnosis. It was IBS, alternating digestive problems, lots and lots of food reactions. I had
Now, were you still going to work during this time?
no,
Okay.
no, I really just couldn't. It was, I mean, it was profound. And another one was interstitial cystitis. Some of these different things came on gradually, but just horrific urinary tract symptoms, terrible, terrible pelvic floor pain, to where I couldn't even sit on this comfy couch, um, in my home without severe pain. And I couldn't go to, my son. Well, I think one of the things that hurts me the most is that my son turned out to be a really great wrestler, and he went to Ohio State for wrestling. I mean, not Ohio State University, but he went to the state of Ohio high school championship for wrestling, which is a big deal in the state of Ohio. And, I couldn't even walk in the gym.
Oh,
And to this day, that really hurts me when I think about all that I missed with my son. Because nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. So, you had that psychological factor too, Glenn, because you felt like you were dying, which I did, but zero validation.
sure.
But you look fine. You sound good. I really liked that one. That one was precious to
Right.
me, you know? And people in my life loved me and care about me, my husband, my children, my parents, but the doctors all said they couldn't find anything wrong with me, so they did not know what to do to help me except just to, you know.
Did you get and just talking to so many people, it's like, oh, I've had so many people tell me it's all in my head. Right.
Oh, yes. I had multiple doctors say to me, "Have you ever considered this is just depression?" Or, "Well, of course you're tired. You have 3 children." Or, quite frankly, Mrs. Haselmayer, we think this is in your head.
Right.
And yeah, I definitely heard that from multiple different doctors.
Right. Okay. So you did mainstream, you sought and you sought and you sought and you didn't get any answers. And then I'm sure you've spent a lot of money
Oh
during
my.
this process. I won't even go there. I won't ask you how much.
It
Um,
was insane how much we spent.
right.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, now I've got to do something else, and so we'll go from there.
Yeah. I ended up seeing a integrative doctor here in Cincinnati who ran a CD57 panel on me, which I had never heard of that because you don't when you work in the mainstream. And he, when I went back for my results, said, "Yeah, you have Lyme disease." And I said, "No, I don't." I've had 3 negative tests. And he said, "Yes, you do." And he was the first one that presented the idea to me that the testing was flawed, that the testing was not reliable, which was new to me.
Right.
And that really caused me to just dig in with all that I had. I was fighting for my life. I really felt like because I had no life. I was literally praying for death. I had such agony in my whole body every single day with no validation anywhere. So I decided, well, the infectious disease people are telling me that is an invalid test. So, but I'm not going to let go of this because this is the first time anybody's given me anything. So I went to another doctor over in a local city, and I had like $7,000 worth of tests. And, the Lyme test came back marginally positive, but that was enough for her. And she told me, "Yep, I think this is what we're looking at." And she was going to do antibiotics with me, but then I received a phone call from a friend of my parents up in Michigan. And she was a nurse like I was, and she had a very similar story: chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia for 18 years, and then found out it was Lyme. And she saw a naturopath up in Michigan that she said, "Theresa, she will help you." I drove up to Michigan 8 hours thinking nobody in my area can help me. And she did bioenergetic testing on me, which was something I had never heard of before, was very skeptical. But when she did that scan on me, she said, "Theresa, you're so sick, I don't know how you're walking." And I sat in her office and I wept because it was the first time anybody had ever validated how sick I really knew I was. And she and I jumped into herbal treatment of Lyme disease, which was something that I was like, okay, I'm allergic to a lot of antibiotics as it is. So you know what? I've suffered for 15 years. What's 6 more months? I'm going to give it 6 months and let's see how this goes. And I jumped in with her.
Okay. Okay. And so you started doing that.
Yeah.
And how long did it take before you started seeing some
Yeah.
gains
It
and
was.
improvements?
Yeah, it was tough, Glenn, because she was really pressing in on the infectious piece, which I appreciated. No one had ever done that before. Excuse me. But she missed the toxic piece with me, how toxic my body was. And so when we started going in there with these herbal antibiotics to kill Lyme, I got so much worse. I became bedbound. At least I could walk, but it was, I had a lot of suffering, but I could at least get in my car. I could drive to the store. I could go to the store. Once I started that herbal protocol, I couldn't walk to my mailbox. I couldn't drive my car. I couldn't go to the store. I mean, I got so much worse. And, what I kept getting was, you get worse before you get better. That's normal. That's what you're supposed to do. And what did I know? I didn't know. So I just kept waiting and waiting and hanging in there. But during that time that I was pretty much bedbound, I just started attending all of these different virtual conferences that I was finding on Lyme disease. And through that, I was learning about many different aspects and modalities. And that was the first time that anybody ever mentioned the possibility that heavy metals or mold or any other environmental toxin could be playing in. And I went to see someone here in Cincinnati who tested me and did find that I was quite high in mercury and lead and uranium, aluminum, multiple different toxins. And so he was doing IV chelation with me, and it really was starting to help budge some of the symptoms. And that's when a huge light bulb came on for me, that it wasn't just about Lyme, that those environmental toxins were really playing a huge role in why I could not detoxify the die-off from the Lyme, and I just wasn't really getting a whole lot better. Sort of on my own, Glenn, I dug into the mold thing. I did multiple tests that told me there's no mold in your home, there's no mold in your house.
Okay.
And I learned kind of after the fact that it was because we didn't provoke that urine test, which is why, and I don't detoxify it well genetically. So that's why it came back none, even though I was loaded with it. And so starting to wrap in both mold binders at that point and ozone therapy, which I also sort of discovered on my own. I would say I was about 18 months into my treatment at that point. In about 3 months, when I started detoxifying and I started getting rid of the poisons out of my body and enabling my body to get rid of mold, that's when my body came back to life. And that's when I made, I would say, 75% progress. And in just that 3-month period, totally drove out interstitial cystitis and pelvic floor pain, which felt like a miracle. The heart pounding improved. So many things improved. My energy was starting to come back online. So much of the pain was leaving my body. And Glenn, that was late 2016. So that was 6 years ago. And I have been in remission ever since. I have had, that first year of my remission, I had maybe 3 flares, but they
Okay.
weren't anything like I had before. And then the second year I had several flares, the third year, maybe one. But the last 3 years, I really haven't had any flares to speak of. And what I learned once I went on for practitioner training in the Uprooting Lyme Clinic in New York, I learned that getting rid of those environmental toxins that cause the chronic inflammation, that cause your body to not be able to get on top of Lyme disease is critical.
Right.
And right around that time, I learned about the Ion Cleanse by AMD. Now, by this point, I had already made a lot of progress, but I bought, you know, just like every other Western trained professional, I thought it was a scam because Google told me, oh, these ionic foot baths are a scam. So I used to tell people it's a scam, don't do it.
Right.
Boy, was I wrong. And I listened to Dietrich Klinghardt because he had become one of my heroes in my Lyme recovery journey. And he was recommending it and he was laying out the science. And I started talking to other practitioners who were using it. And I said, what do I have to lose? I'm going to use it. By this point, I had already started Foundations Wellness Coaching because so many people were coming up to me saying, oh my gosh, Theresa, they knew I was sick for 15 years and that
Right.
my recovery was rather miraculous. And they said, how did you do it? How did you get better? And so my coaching practice began sort of informally. I formalized it. I got my certification in New York. I started using herbal protocols myself because I was then trained. Finally, I was trained and certified to do so. But I knew I wanted something to help people get toxins out of their body because if they didn't, they were going to end up like me. They were going to herx, and
Right.
get worse before they got better. So I started using the Ion Cleanse in my practice. And I was amazed at what I was seeing in the people who were willing to come in every week and use it. And I've been using it ever since.
Right. Great. Well, this is a perfect time for me to say, well, the Ion Cleanse, as you well know, we are rated as a non-medical device. So obviously we don't diagnose, we don't treat, we don't cure. That being said, and it's really kind of, God, thank you so much for sharing your story. You know people go through challenges, and when I talk to people about Lyme, and probably that's the second, third largest community we're helping in, is people on a spectrum as well, right? It's like, that's why I asked, were you working? Some people, I can barely function no, I'm doing good, but I have certain times where I'm flaring, I'm doing my worst. And, a lot of people don't put that component. They think about the die-off, the release of those endotoxins, and that's when people are flaring, feeling their worst, but they don't often realize that what do we know about Lyme? What do we know about mold? Is it they thrive in what? A heavy metal environment. So very important to be able to address both of those. And,
Right.
that's one of the things I really talk about. And what I love about this Ion Cleanse system is the fact that we create negative ions and positive ions. So regardless of the toxic load, we're help mobilizing both because we're able to create both negative and positive ions.
Yep. I do love the Ion Cleanse. I mean, I in the 6 years I've been using it, I could tell you so many stories of so many people, children, adults, people who made very fast progress, dramatic progress. And then, of course, you always had the people who really struggled. And so I've been able to learn and tweak my protocols in that time so that the people with the severe mast cell activation syndromes, the people with the extreme sensitivities and reactivities, were learning how to deal with that so that that they can have maximum success with their healing protocols.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So what does that kind of look like now that now you become certified? And I'm not going to call you an expert, even though in my opinion you are but you've helped so many different people. What would be your words to those? And I know you work with people remotely, but where does one start? It's like, okay, I think I have Lyme, but I'm not sure. I've been, if I had $1 for every person, well, I've been tested. They say I don't have Lyme disease. What would be your recommendation to those people that are struggling, that kind of in the back of their mind, they think, man, there's a good likelihood I have Lyme or I have mold, and they're just not getting that validation. Those tests aren't coming back.
Yeah.
What words do you have?
Yeah, it totally depends on the person. So I have this conversation in my office every time or every day. So the people who are at the very beginning of their journey and they really want to just know, how do I start? They've never done a traditional ELISA or Western blot before. Go ahead and do it. If your insurance will cover it and your doctor will order it, send me the results. Let me look at it. Let me help you interpret those results based on my training and my background. If that comes back perfectly negative, but you still feel you have the clinical picture for Lyme, then we can order some better testing that can look, it just, so the traditional ELISA and Western blot that the CDC recommends looks for one strain of Lyme, which is Borrelia burgdorferi, which is the most common strain of Lyme. But if you don't have that particular one, and many people do not, they have, there's 99 other strains in the US alone. And there's a whole family of Borrelia called tick-borne relapsing fever Borrelia. It's not exactly Lyme disease. It is in the Lyme family, but those will not give you a positive result on a standard test that your doctor or that infectious disease will run on you. And so many of us have resorted to using bioenergetic testing. I use Zyto.
Okay.
Zyto Elite scanning, and many times those will give us a very good idea if it's there or not. Now, the FDA, of course, tells us you may not diagnose with those, and so we don't.
Right.
But if it shows up on the Zyto scan and you have many of the classic symptoms, then I will have that whole discussion with you that if you would like to do a natural healing protocol, I cannot prescribe any antibiotics for you. But if you would like to do a natural healing protocol, we'll jump in there together and I will coach you through that. And some people, when they use the custom herbal formulas that we create, there's many herbal formulas that I use, but one that's very, very unique and cutting edge that I use are liposomal essential oil formulas
Okay.
based on the Johns Hopkins research. They can give some people very fast symptom relief. And if they do get very fast symptom relief without much herxing at all, then we know much of your symptoms probably are infection based. If you take it and you have die-off reactions, if you're having trouble, then we know you've got a toxic piece that's creating this chronic inflammation, these die-off reaction, these Herxheimer reactions. And so the scanning can give us an idea about some of that too. The reason I like to do both the bioenergetic scanning and the truly diagnostic labs, is because the bioenergetic scanning really only gives us your body's priorities on any given day. Is your body prioritizing mold? Is your body prioritizing Lyme or co-infections or parasites, which are very, very, very often missed in
Right.
diagnostic testing? Then, we can go with that. But if you're one of those people like me, you want the data, you want the hard data, you want the diagnostic lab, we can do that too. And because those will tell us, yes, this is here and here's how much, or I won't say no, it's not there, because there's no real perfect test out there that tells us no, it's not there.
Right.
There's better testing that can tell us, yes, it is there. And, you know, for now, based on your body's ability to make these certain antibodies and proteins we're looking for, we can see that it's there.
Right.
So that's how I start with people. I just kind of see where they're at. If they've been around the block and they've already done the Western blot, they've already seen 5-10 doctors, and they've already tried antibiotics. They've already tried various herbal protocols. You know, they will start them in a different place, you know.
Sure.
And that really varies on the conversation that I have with them and what our Zytoscan is telling us. So it's very individual, but I will always have environmental toxins on my radar screen because I see it in my office every day. Heavy metals like lead, mercury, uranium, radioactive elements.
Right. Right.
People have no idea they've got radioactive elements in their body. Just a quick side note, I grew up near a nuclear missile manufacturing plant. Didn't know it.
Right.
It was called a feed plant, and everyone thought it was animal feed. We
Right.
didn't know it was your enriched uranium to feed nuclear missiles, and we didn't obviously know that they were leaching radioactive uranium into our soil and water. And, you know, I grew up in the 5-mile radius of
Right.
that.
Wow.
But you don't even have to grow up in the 5-mile radius. So many people who do the true diagnostic labs will find uranium in their body and are absolutely floored that they could have an exposure to something like that. Talk about chronic inflammation. No wonder my body couldn't detoxify mold.
Sure.
No
Absolutely.
wonder. No wonder every time I took an herb to kill Lyme, I got so much worse.
Okay,
So,
so there, I want to dive into that a little bit here because
yeah,
I had a lot of people, and I know one of the biggest questions. Hey, I've heard about this iron cleanse and this and that. What about Herx reactions? What about detox reactions? Because I have a lot of practitioners using the iron cleanse to minimize the Herx reactions. But going back to let's killing the bug, if you will, that as we do that, that's going to cause that die off. So here's my question to you: is one's an iron cleanse related, one's not. As we go to quote solve the problem, kill the bug, how substantial are those Herx reactions that die off? Number one, and number two, have you seen that the iron cleanse actually helps? Because what we do know is that endotoxins are those negatively charged. Positive ions going to help them get out of the body more quickly and help people feel better. Are we on the same page with that thought process?
100%.
Okay.
100%. I'm telling you, every person I meet with, I write that on their wellness plan. I say, I highly encourage you to come in for these ion cleanse detox foot baths at least 1 time per week, 2 if you can make it in.
Right.
And for a minimum of like 8 to 12 weeks, because we need to use the ion cleanse to help open up your detox channels. Because if your liver and your kidneys and your lymphatic are so clogged with glyphosate, with mold, with pesticides and herbicides, which are highly prioritized on the cytoscan in almost everybody, then we've got to help unblock some of those drainage pathways, those detox pathways. Otherwise, when we go in there to, you know, blast away at Lyme disease, Bartonella, Babesia, parasites, fungal organisms, Aspergillus, Candida, you are going to feel worse before you get better. And I don't want that for you. I want
Sure.
you to make the quickest progress that we can and as painlessly as possible. So for some people, literally, Glenn, the ion cleanse will just feel miraculous. They will not be able to believe how much better they feel from that one modality alone. And it makes killing Lyme so much easier. For others, it's not a piece of cake, it's a real battle. And so I get down in the trench with them and give them all the tools in my toolbox so that they can be as successful as possible at killing these bugs, and draining their body of these toxins. And I could go on and on and on and on about how much those toxins play into the complexities of Lyme disease. It really makes a huge difference, the burden that you have in your body. Which ones do you have? And I use the ion cleanse with everybody, really.
Fantastic.
Or I
You
try
know,
to. They don't all come in.
well, and I know a lot of your clients buy machines as well.
Yes,
And
they do.
so referred by Theresa. So we see that all the time. So thank you for that ongoing support. You know, what I would I'm going to kind of go back, and I want to talk to the audience here. And I do this anyway, but I think you really made the point, is if so many people get beaten down mentally saying there's not anything wrong with you. You know, what I tell people all the time is we detox at different rates. Somebody in your house could be severely affected by mold, and I was guilty of this myself. I had mold in my basement. I had black mold. I didn't know it. My son kept, man, I don't feel good, on and on. I'm like, dude, you're fine. Well, you need to drink more water. You're dehydrated. You're this. And, I was guilty. I minimized it. And, $40,000 later, I didn't move out of my house, but I literally gutted everything and started from scratch. And, I had a great remediation. But I share that if you're one of those and you have a family member that just is continually, hey, something is not right, please don't dismiss that person, because I did that. I was guilty. And, I know that being on the other end of that, when people tell you you're fine, you're imagining things, man, it's just, it's so deflating.
Well, that's honestly, just full vulnerability here. That's why I prayed for death. For years I did. And I'm a person of faith, Glenn. I asked for healing so many times, but it never came to me. And doesn't mean I don't believe in it. I do. But for me, I did not feel that I would never harm myself, because I would never do that to my family. But the agony, the suffering was profound. And I had to learn, like anyone else who's lived with this for 15 years or longer. I see people who have had it for 50 years. You have to learn to put on the face, and I learned how to put on the face. So, but I desperately wanted someone to take me seriously and to go to bat for me and to help me. and anyway, here I am today.
There you go. Well, that's awesome. I thank you so much for sharing. I'm gonna pull up a slide here real quick. And let me share. So if people want to get a hold of you, and correct me if I'm wrong, you now have a team, right? You've built your office up. Foundations Wellness Coaching. You can find Theresa and team through Facebook. Website, Foundations Wellness Coaching, phone number, all of that. Anything that anybody needs to know about contacting you, you work with people all over you can do this remotely, correct?
Yes, and those two nurses came to me from a major pediatric facility, which I will not mention the name, but
Okay.
they really just wanted to make a difference with kids, with really, really sick kids. So yeah, I have seen kids myself and had a lot of success with them, but my team, we're seeing adults and children because they
Do
have
you have any age
mental health.
restrictions on children? Down to what age? Just as young as, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've had 2, 3, 4-year-olds brought to us.
Great. Okay. Well, Theresa, thank you so much. Again, I'm going to make all of this information available. I cannot thank you enough. And, going back, and I don't want to go too much on this, it's like, you said you're a person of faith. Well, obviously, you found your calling, and there's a reason that you suffered as long as you did so that you can now do this and help so many different people. So, but anyway,
Yeah.
that could be a whole nother conversation that we have. So
It really is.
yeah. So absolutely. Well, Theresa, thank you so much for joining me today. And look forward to working with you in the years to come. And just can't thank you enough for all the support that you've given the Iron Cleanse by AMD.
Yeah. Thank you, Glenn.
All right. Thank you.